Welcome to Study Session 6, Free Will and Determination. In this study session, we will examine the notion of free will and determinism. We will also discuss forms of determinism and distinguish determinism from other related concepts. When you have studied this session, you should be able to explain the basic concept of determinism, free will, reason, and causes. It will be necessary at this outset to differentiate between determinism, fatalism, and predeterminism, since the main point of this study session is determinism. The examination of the notion shall be reserved for later discussion in the study session. Fatalism is different from determinism in the sense that fatalism is a position that says that what will be, will be. And so, for a fatalist who is about to take a boat across the river and is advised to learn how to swim in case of any boat mishap, would respond that if he is fated to die by drowning, learning how to swim is useless, and if he is fated not to die by drowning, learning how to swim is not necessary. Predestination or predeterminism, as it is sometimes preferred, is the position that says that one has been prearranged to take some particular course and have particular consequences. This prearrangement is in the hands of some forces, powers, or providence. All these are different from determinism or universal causation. This study of free will and determinism is centered on the connection between events and their causes. By events here is meant natural phenomena and human actions. It will be useful to begin our discussion with an analysis of the notion of determinism. The idea of determinism derives from the idea of causality or causation. In other words, by determinism, it is understood that every event has a cause, and like events have like causes. What this translates to is that all events, including human actions, are backed by causes. To say this is to say that if A is the cause of B, then whenever A occurs, B must follow, and whenever B occurs, A must have taken place. And since causation is guided by natural law, it means that A causing B is guided by natural law, such that whenever A occurs, B cannot but follow. Therefore, B is a necessary consequence from A, or A is a necessary and sufficient condition for B. It is against this background and understanding of the notion of determinism that free will emerges as a problem. For every event has a cause, and every such event must necessarily follow its cause, and given that human action is an event, then it cannot but follow its cause. What this means is that such human actions are out of necessity and are not within the control of the human factor. This is so because the human actor is not free, given the natural laws controlling events. If such human actors are not free, then they cannot choose. This is, however, opposed to the general belief that humans are moral and rational agents, able to make choices after deliberation and consideration of options, and therefore responsible for actions carried out. By this understanding of the notion of free will in relation to human reason, human actions are not guided by natural laws or laws of nature, although they are guided by reasons. The difference between reasons and causes can be explained as follows. The relationship between causes and effect is that of a necessary one, such that once we have the cause, the effect naturally follows. On the other hand, the relationship between reasons and human actions is not a necessary one, because one can have a reason A and carry out an action B, or the same reason A in a different circumstances can carry out the action C or no action at all. Determinism is, roughly speaking, the idea that every event is necessitated by antecedent events and conditions together with the laws of nature. The idea is ancient, but first became subject to clarification and analysis in the 18th century. Determinism is deeply connected with our understanding of the physical sciences and their explanatory ambitions on the one hand, and with our views about human free action on the other. Determinism is often taken to mean simply causal determinism, that is, an idea known in physics as cause and effect. It is a concept that events within a given paradigm are bound by causality in such a way that any state is completely determined by prior states. Determinism, as a philosophical position, states that for everything that happens, there are conditions such that, given those conditions, nothing else could happen. Different versions of this theory depend upon the various alleged connections and interdependencies of things and events, asserting that this holds without exception. Deterministic theories throughout the history of philosophy have sprung from diverse motives and considerations, some of which overlap. They can be understood in relation to the historical significance and alternative theories. Let us now take a look at ethical determinism. Before that, other forms of determinism have been postulated. These include ethical determinism, physical determinism, and psychological determinism. It will be appropriate to make a few comments on the mentioned forms of determinism. Ethical determinism. This theory of determinism can be linked to Socrates, who argued centuries ago that every man always chooses what seems best to him, and that no man can set as the object of his choice something that seems evil or bad to him. Plato agreed with this view and holds that no man who knows what is good can possibly choose anything else. Thus, wrongdoing or the pursuit of evil must always be either involuntary or as a result of ignorance. In other words, if one knows the good, he automatically seeks it. The theory of determinism evident in this ethical intellectualism is that man's voluntary actions are invariably determined by an apparent good. Hence, all their actions are determined by this, if by anything else. Physical determinism. This theory of determinism was inspired mainly by the development of physical science, particularly in the 17th and 18th century. The idea in this theory is that all things in nature, men included, behave according to the inviolable and unchanging laws of nature. This conception of determinism undermines the thinking that human actions and other events are determined by moral considerations or by an external, immutable God, and began thinking of them as determined by external and immutable laws of nature. Psychological determinism. This version of determinism as applied to human beings sees human behavior as the unconstrained and unimpeded behavior that is caused by an act of will, motive, or some other inner event. These acts of will and other inner cases are considered as mental within the agent. Before we examine the debates between determinism and free will, it will be appropriate to look at free will. Ordinarily, we use the word free in many ways. When I say, for instance, that the road is free, I mean there is little or no traffic to hamper my movement. When a judge says a man is set free, It means he is no longer liable and can move freely without security escorts. Study session free period means no study session will be conducted within that period. All these understandings refer in a way to the concept of freedom and free will, but the two concepts should not be confused. While free will is the power of self-determination or the power to act as one chooses or pleases, freedom refers to the ability or liberty to act without restraint or inhibition. Freedom therefore refers to the absence of restraints or constraints. In this regard, I am therefore free to the extent to which no human being interferes with my activity. This conception of freedom is normally referred to as negative freedom. There is also the notion of positive freedom, which is identical with the full realization of the individual's potentiality, together with his ability to live actively and spontaneously. Thus, while negative freedom is talking about freedom from, positive freedom refers to freedom to. The idea of free will can be construed to have developed out of the attempt to reflect on these notions of freedom. As such, free will means the power to will to act as one chooses, independent of both external and internal determinants. Put differently, free will is a philosophical term for a particular sort of capacity of rational agents to choose a course of action from among various alternatives. Philosophers have debated this question for over 2 millennia, and just about every major philosopher has had something to say about it. What most philosophers suppose is that the concept of free will is very closely connected to the concept of moral responsibility. Acting with free will on such views is just to satisfy the metaphysical requirement on being responsible for one's action. The significance of free will, however, is not exhausted by its connection to moral responsibility. Free will also appears to be a condition on desert for one's accomplishments, a condition on the autonomy and dignity of persons, and a condition on the value we accord to love and friendship. In all, every human action, if rational, is intentional and voluntary. It must be mentioned here, however, that although all voluntary actions are intentional, not all intentional actions are voluntary. Thus, a full, judgeable human action must be both intentional and voluntary, and therefore fully rational. As such, this problem seems to revolve about determining how far a belief in human freedom is consistent with our experience, our knowledge, and our views about human nature. In this study session, we examined the notion of determinism and free will. We examined the idea of free will against the background understanding of the notion of determinism. We distinguished determinism from fatalism and predestination. We concluded by bringing to the fore the implications of determinism when accepted as guiding principles for human actions and separated the notions of reason from causes. And with that, we come to the end of study session 6. Thank you for listening.